The EFINA podcast, an advocacy tool that seeks to illuminate the financial and economic inclusion challenges, solutions, and advancements in Nigeria. It is the first podcast in Nigeria focusing on this discourse. Join us on this journey.
Welcome to today's podcast of the EFINA podcast series. In today's episode 6, we will be discussing an interesting topic, which we have titled Designing for Women, Empowering Households and Communities. The EFINA podcast is a multi-stakeholder conversation platform where we discuss issues that border on financial and economic inclusion, bringing to this podcast seasoned and experienced stakeholders, professionals who have done an amazing job in this space. And in today's episode, it's my pleasure to welcome an amazing guest, somebody that I've looked up to, who has done a lot of work around products, merchant, and all of those. At the moment, he is the Chief Product Officer at Sterling Bank. Now I've let the cat out of the bag. He's no other person than Mustapha Otaru. Mustapha is a DFS professional, certified digital finance practitioner with the Digital Frontiers Institute and the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts University, USA. He's had an amazing career from MTN. Now he's in banking and been doing a lot of work. We'll hear some of those amazing projects that Mustapha has been championing at Sterling Bank, and also how we can design for women. And by doing so, we are hoping that we expand economic opportunities to them by enabling them with tools, financial tools that can then make them unlock the potentials that are available to women. Part of the conversation today will also be how to look at women-specific nuances while designing for women. Again, just to see how the woman, right, when empowered, can then unleash the potentials that, men wouldn't even really unleash. So, Mustapha, you're welcome to today's EFINA podcast series, episode 6. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine, Emmanuel. I think we've been having this conversation and finally it's happening.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
The pleasure is mine. Just to take your mind back, you've been in product, right? And you've been designing from telco, now you are in core financial services.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that matters when it comes to product design and product development? Let me put the two together. Yeah.
I think what matters is what fits the customer. It's really, really important that at every point in time, you're thinking product. You should be thinking the target. Who will the product be serving?
Okay.
What are the needs of the people? What are the uniqueness among how they use this product? We often miss the fact that, especially when you're in the boardroom talking about initiatives and ideas.
Okay.
People often miss the part that we're talking about human beings eventually in a very diverse settings where beyond the fact that there's a male and a female, or there's a man and a woman that needs to use this product, is the fact that there are other societal factors, from social to religious to economic factors, and also by extension to policy factors that are around how people consume, relate, and also even recommend the products for other people as well. So one very most important factor is in the corporate world where we for profit, we say the customer.
Okay.
So in this particular context, is the human being behind the usage of the product that really matter. Whether you're in the conception stage, or you're even developing it, or you're at the testing phase, or whatever some people call it pilot phase, you need to ascertain that, again, that product is speaking to the target market or is speaking to the people you intend to serve with the product.
Two things that you spoke to. First, the factors, right? And I'm going to ask, are these different for men versus women? That's question one.
Yeah.
Number two would then be, is there a difference between humans and customers? Can we contextualize this?
Okay. Yes. The first question, yes.
Okay.
Men consume product differently. Women consume product more uniquely.
How can you expatiate?
Okay. Women have the responsibility of caregiving. right? For
Okay.
instance. Yes, maybe men in the recent time are becoming more involved in that area, but
My father would disagree that they've always been.
Yeah, so traditionally,
Okay.
women have the responsibility of consuming, especially when it comes to financial product. One, even if she works, she earns her own money, right? And in a societal setting, she has responsibility not just for her kids. Most times, especially in our cultural settings, is a woman or is a girl child that will remember the father to, oh, I want to send to my father. As a male child, I'm just giving a context.
Yeah.
As a male child, until you are satisfied and your family says that you don't remember home, but I can tell you that it is girl child. It's evidently proven that it is the girl child or the woman that will remember even her parents first, right? So what that tells you is that if you're designing a product for these two contextual people, her own needs or wants might be different, or not just significantly different from, a man, that all he does is just simple savings or buy things and the like. But here, women save better. When they take loan, evidence have shown that women even pay better than men. You get it? So at the end of the day, if you're designing a product for a customer and you're doing it a one size fits all, there's already a problem, right? Because the consumption pattern, the usage pattern, the access even is a problem in this instance. Really, when we go further into the rural settings where women are even further deprived of certain opportunities, right? You tend to see that, products then has to be uniquely. That's why I use for women, I said uniquely positioned for them so that they can also consume the product that suits into their lifestyle. Your second question around the customer and the human.
Yeah.
I like to use the human.
Okay.
Most times, because customers can be contextualized in different things. An institution can be a customer.
True.
Right? It's not a human being. But at the end of the day, beyond that customer, beneath it is that it touches a human being.
Who has emotions.
Who has needs, who is evolving all the time.
True.
You get it? So, for instance, if you want to contextualize in the context of a woman, when a woman is single, like a spinster, her need is different, right? Even why she gets into the matrimonial home, right? At the early stage is different. Even why she's pregnant, her need is different.
True.
When the baby comes, her need is different. You get it? So that evolution needs to take. And again, if she's running a business or she's self-employed or she's an entrepreneur or she's even working in the corporate, her needs are different. So all these are some of the nitty-gritties that you have to think through while designing product for a woman or for a human being, right?
Yeah.
Who are the people, right? How do they consume today? Or what do they even do today that makes the way they do things even unique to them? Right. Again, when we're using tech, right, which again is common today, that all of us are within the tech ecosystem, digital products and all that. There are traditional ways people do savings today. For example, women do savings today, either among their women group or even different formats, right? You need to understand how that works. If you go design a product from your boardroom and you drop it for them, it's going to be a problem. You need to layer that.
That sounds like a very rigorous process from what you have described. The question I then ask would be, generally, if you talk about people who use financial services, there is about a 9% gap between men and women. Then when you then narrow down to formal financial services, right, the gap is as wide as 11%. Women about 54 to, So the question then is, if we know all these things as financial service providers, why do we still have, and this gap, for the longest of time I started doing financial inclusion from a research to intervention far back 2016, that's from 7 to 9 to 11% gap has always been there. So if we know all these things as financial service provider, why has this gap persisted? What could then be the barriers? So why? And if you could just explain as to the why.
So my perspective, which I don't think is far from what it is the fact that we are focused on financial inclusion and not necessarily economic inclusion. I think both needs to work together to really, really and genuinely break the gap. Sadly, I always feel that we like talking about it, speak the best of English that describe it, but we're not genuinely doing the work around it. And financial services or corporate entities can't do it alone, or the EFINA advocacy programs can't do it alone. You need the government to do that, because there's a lot around policy and regulation that should push that. And while the corporate institutions that really do most times make this or design this product, from the guys that see the research, from non-governmental organizations that see from the support from policy, it has to sort of work together. So what you tend to see is that, for instance, we need to take care of the social aspect, right, of the woman. Literacy is an issue. By the time you go up north, especially in the Nigerian context, Nigeria is very diverse. How many ethnicities do we have in Nigeria? More than 300 plus, right? And in each of these ethnics, there are different social, cultural nuances that most times when you double click on them, they don't favor the woman. As simple as opening a bank account, you need a male consent. It's a problem, right? Or you need somebody to accompany you to a bank, right, as a woman, right? But that's not the same for the man. Or a money agent cannot go in to see a woman because the woman is secluded. And that is cultural. That's not going to go away. But then policy and people that are in the institution and EFINA, your program as an advocate for some of these policies, need to now specifically work around the kind of services or product that can go to these people. There are two different things now. When they can't come, how do you make it available to them? Because the truth is, if we do not empower them economically, they can't. It's when you can't just open an account and you think you've included somebody or you've given the person a product.
True.
The person needs the fuel that uses the product. It's money, especially for financial services. At the end of the day, there must be money coming through. True. If the woman is not empowered to be able to have a viable economic exchange, when I mean something that the person sells, either a trade, even if he's a full-time housewife that is dependent on the husband, right? You know, how does she even know that, you know, she can, you know, from the savings, from the stipend she gets, she can make a savings for herself for certain opportunities or certain things she might need in the future. So I think if we look at inclusion from an economic empowerment perspective, again, supported by core or genuinely designed social intervention support from the government, I think that's when we can truly bridge that gap. I think we've been paying a lot of lip service to it, really, in my opinion, right? So again, inclusion, financial inclusion, economic inclusion, also cultural equality needs to be addressed to really, genuinely addressed. What that means is that there are design programs, there are strong advocacy, you know, from a policy or regulatory shaping perspective that should really support that. There's been a lot of convention, a lot of sit-up, a lot of legislation around it. But again, at the end of the day, it does seem that a lot of these papers are just in some places and the real actions are not taken to the grassroots. You get it? So that's my opinion, really.
I have a very important question. So, talking about gender responsive designs, for instance, you design products, one woman, for instance, right? Yes. Tell us your experience. Because you just talked about the sociocultural factors, navigating the challenge across different geopolitical or cultural diversities, right? In pushing your product that you have built and by extension your knowledge of the industry. From a government point of view, what do you really think are the barriers? So I'll paint a context. We have the government, the JIP program. We have trader money, for instance. We have different interventions that are being built, right, in time past, and they're even still on now. At the moment, AfriGo is in partnership with NIMSI to roll out a general multipurpose card that is then supposed to use to drive some of these interventions, social safety or social welfare programs that you talk about. Part of the thing that you've alluded to now is that we need this kind of impact economic intervention programs to be layered on these products so that the woman has continuity to use the product, because the product is now a tool, a vehicle, a channel, or a store of value, you know, through which you can then unlock those economic empowerment programs, right? What then would you say has been government's response, right, in adopting these products that are uniquely designed for women, so that they are not just restricted to you send money to me, I send money to you, that you can then have a program that is built around them. Have government really been able to buy into some of these programs, that because you will have done your human-centered design from what you have painted, that journey mapping, to understand the behavior, the psychographics, layer them on the demographics, so that you are able to then come with this product, serves the specific needs, is adaptable to this scenario. What has been government response, or even development institutions response to working with financial service providers or adopting some of these innovative solutions to make sure that they scale?
To be honest, I think in the time past, it hasn't been as smooth, especially working with the government around this.
Okay.
In recent times, I'm beginning to see a lot of
Traction.
Okay. Maybe not traction, a lot of improvement. At least when you are in the room and you speak to them, they're excited about it.
Okay.
They want to get into it. They understand it. They understand the need for it. Before, it's even a struggle for people to sit in the room and for people to see the need why you're doing this. A lot of time, why again, if you all the intervention you mentioned, why there seems to be skewed towards the men is because, let me tell you, as little as people going to queue up for this event, women are disadvantaged in terms of power push. A pregnant woman who goes stand in the queue, is already disadvantaged because at that stage she is. You get it. A man who just push her away, and of course, whoever gets in the line first.
True.
I mean, this thing I've just said, as trivial as it may sound, it's a major issue. You see, at the end of the day, it is skewed towards the men. What we've seen, one woman predicts me in sterling, particularly, but over time that product has also evolved.
Okay.
Right. The product in question, right, is specifically for women, right? From if you are into distributorship, it gives you advisory. If you want a mortgage, if you want to rent, as far as entrepreneurship, it gives you certain advisory. Map your cash flow, map your specific needs and everything. In fact, they have their debit card is uniquely designed for them. So, at the end of the day, financial services like Sterling, financial institutions like Sterling, might not be able to do it all alone. Without the support of the government, right? There is a team specifically in Sterling today that does the one-woman program, and they've tried a lot. They've impacted quite a number of women, accessing the facilities, accessing the financial advisory services on the platform. Also, the kind of products, that's also tailored to them. One of the things we've done early in 2023 was the Smedan partnership with Sterling, right? And we also went back and said, okay, look, we recognize women, right? Within the entire SME entrepreneurship ecosystem. How do we also support them? And what we did was that we also said, if you recall, that the loan partnership was about 9%, and you can't get that price anywhere, right? Was that, okay, let us specifically target women, to under the one woman program, for them to have access to that. And we had very fantastic testimony. What we then need, right, is for that's a partnership with the government for that's Smedan. Smedan is a government agency that's in charge of the small medium scale enterprises. So that's a government agency. So what we then need is that how do we trickle this down to the very, very last mile, right? The local government, the state government, up to the federal level, because the real impact you really will want to make is at that grassroots level. Record keeping, identity is still a problem, right, in this country, despite the NIN, the BVN, and all that. You get it. So women, if you also look at the statistics on this identity portal or database, you also see that
it's skewed
as well, right? Women, the numbers shows that not as many women have the NIN or the BVN,
But when you then flip it to voters card, for instance, you then see more women.
More women.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it tells you.
However, the NIN is not the foundational ID. Okay.
You get it. So it's important that we understand a lot of
the nuances.
Nuances of this, so that again, when we are designing, whether it's a service or it's an intervention or social intervention, in my opinion, these are the things you need to take care of to really get the right impact or outcome that is desired. So yes, the kind of advocacy EFINA does, right, I think it needs to be strengthened, continue to be strengthened, as you guys have always done over the years, right, to bring out some of these things onto the table to really work with institutions and governments. And when I mean government, from the very local government to the federal government,
even the community
level kind of advocacy or support for them, for us to all come together and, you know, design things that are really, really impactful. You get it? So, because even that's why you see that intervention program seems to struggle, because we don't actually, you know, do this handshake.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of it for all kind of a design, right?
Yeah.
It's against, you know, taking care of, you know, everybody, you know, as it uniquely fits them.
Let's look at the design process, because we're talking about designing for women, empowering households and communities. In my mind, from an HCD background, would then be, if I have a woman that I'm building a persona around, right? I'm not just looking at the woman, I'm looking at the family around her, the community around her, the institutions around her, right? So you call it an ecosystem mapping, right? Let's look at the time to start the journey, right? Understanding the woman, and when the product then comes out. What is that process like? And could that be a reason why most institutions do not invest in approaches like design thinking and human-centered design?
In all honesty, it's a tedious process. And if you do it well, it pays off on the long run. It requires resource, and it also requires patience. If you look at the typical product development cycle, there's what we call the discovery stage. The discovery stage, basically, where you gather your requirements, you tend to speak to customers, you document what you've seen, you start, you know, sketching of what you think could possibly be a solution, and you also, within that discovery, you're also thinking, you're validating what you think they are saying.
True.
And all that. It takes time, right? It also takes a lot of knowledge from the person also also administering that kind of process.
True.
You know, to do. In fairness, I don't think there are a lot of institutions that go through that rigor. And again, that also tells you why we miss it all the time, right? And we try our best, you know, in the sense that we understand when we identify to say there's a problem. You know, everything must start from a problem perspective, right? There's a problem, and this is what we think should be the solution. And that problem, you know, it could be seen that, you know, the problem in negative terms, problem in terms of an opportunity to solve a problem or to create an impact. So, and if you don't do that, you might not necessarily even understand the problem. You might at the end of the day understand the problem from the surface and not by its depth of how the
impact is.
So that's really the problem. So organizations, like I always say, you must, if you really want to have a product, people talk about product market fit.
Yeah.
Right? If you really want to have a product that fits the persona that you want to serve, or the kind of people you want to serve. And again, there are different methods to do it. You don't have to go through everybody. There are sampling methods that can be applied.
Okay.
You know, with those kind of either you want to randomize, or you want to cluster, you want to group, or you want whatever you want to do. That are cheaper ways to do it. And again, one particular part I like so much is the validation part. This is what I thought you were saying. I've done it based on the design or the idea. I've gathered your requirement. I take it back to revalidate. Say, is this what you're saying? At that time, the woman or the customer,
the would-be customer.
Yes, the would-be customer, you know, is already saying, okay. And if you get what the person is saying, he's already an adopter. He or she's already an adopter of the product, because, you know, they can see that you're bringing to life what they need. So I think that rigor, you know, needs to happen all the time, and again, validates before you even go into development. And when by the time you've developed and you're delivering to the market, that's really when the work starts. You know, again, most times you think it's that process of delivery that is the work. No, it's not the process. It's not that process. It is when the product is live and is in the hands of the woman or is in the hands of the people that work really start. Because at that time, they started interacting with the product. This is a live product in a sense, right? In them, they are beginning to rethink what they think is really the solution. At that time, as the owner of the product, you're beginning to get a feedback. That's when iteration comes, right? You need to take it back and start iterating to make it even further fit for them. Because most times you design a product for certain segments.
True.
And you realize that it's actually speaking to a different segment. Or customers themselves or individuals themselves redesign your product journey in a way that you never thought about. You get it? So that's really very important. And again, if you do your early days of discovery appropriately, understanding what the problem is and the kind of solution that should be on the table, you really might not have a lot of iteration eventually, right? You keep iteration to improve, for instance, the UX or the other side of products, but then it might be cheaper for you to run. And again, but that early stage of discovery, it's really, really important.
So I have a question to follow up on that. So when you say a lot of, where to be honest, this rigorous process is not really apparent in many institutions, right? Question that comes to my mind would then be, why? Is it for lack of the technical know-how? Is it for the fear of or want to take advantage? Is it they call in strategy first mover advantage, time to market is too, so if I spend all the time perfecting, my competition will have been in the market? Is that the reason? Or is it the financial resources that is required to commit into a product, comparing it with the time to break even, right? What are really the reasons why FSPs seem to shy away from a rigorous process like this that could then drive the desired impact?
It's a combination of everything you mentioned, right? And they could be unique for different organizations and all that. But what I do know is that for profit organizations, time to market is a critical thing that it's always on their table. And that shouldn't be, or that shouldn't always be so, right? There's a technical know-how around it, right, as well. And I think that's where continuous education, continuous capacity building in that area, is required. But it's also costly, right? There's also the funding around it. And that's why, we need to do a lot of R&D, research and development, investments, even from an advocacy perspective, right? From a government perspective, and when I mean government, I'm talking about policy, right? To support, to say a certain thing should happen, from a product perspective, we should have a clear path or a clear mapping of what exactly, in terms of research, in terms of the user design, in terms of the psychometrics even around it, to understand, especially when you are talking about women. So, because at the end of the day, anything for a woman should be it should be an impact driven. As I say, once you educate one woman and you build a nation, right? So those are the kind of things. So specific to your question, I think it's a combination of everything you mentioned, and I think we need to put it on the spotlight, to highlight it always, to say, look, we need to take our time to design, to go to really do a deep dive into the discovery stage of products, right? Invest in research, invest in the early stage of understanding what is required, around that stage before you start building or shipping product into the market.
Okay, we'll round up with this. So let me put all of them together. First, is there, because if we talk about that, when you design, you've described the woman when we started, and the immense opportunities around really designing with the woman in mind, and how you can unlock several economic opportunities. But then, what informs our design? So another approach would then be, do we collect gender-specific data, for instance? So you even look at products that are in-house. Do we track behavior across gender for products that are already in-house to then help us reimagine, right, what the product could be like based on what we have? Is that a practice you see happen in the ecosystem?
Oh, yes. At least on a personal note, and even I like a culture of data, like a data-driven decision making, and like that. Yeah. So, what I see, even in products that are generic products, is that I've always spot that women use their products in a particular way. For instance, if I look at the data on my one bank is our banking platform. At the end of the month, you are likely going to see that most women on the platform, I'm not saying men don't go for shopping, of course. Okay. You see a lot of them spending in certain locations. That tells you that it's at that time of the month where they are stocking up. You also see patterns of school fees payments, when the school resumes. Yeah. The man might be providing the money, but at the end of the day, the outflow from the account, likely you see it more
from the woman.
So if we begin to understand or look at data, I think we need to be very data-centric, right? To your point specifically. See, because existing product, if we look at the data, understand the behaviors of usage and everything, there's a lot that can come out of it that we can use to understand or reiterate products, right? So that's on the design side of things. So having a woman in mind, gender in mind is critical because I do know that, for instance, for my loan portfolio, Spectre, for instance, is a digital platform for lending, right? We also have the business support facility. Women pay regularly. I get what I'm saying. If they are to pay 25th, right, they will pay on the 25th. If there is a need for default, it is women that will always highlight that, this month I might not be able to.
The men are indicted.
No, I don't know why. I think in terms of commitment, I'm not saying men can't be committed, right?
No, I get your point.
They are naturally inclined, to feel obligated to fulfill their commitment, right? To respond to the obligation. I can also tell you there was a time I was like, how many people do we impose penal charge on if you miss your loan date? It comes with a penalty.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there are no women. There are women, but there are fewer than men. Those are some of the data that informs you, how some of these things sort of evolve. So how, again, if you even bank a woman, you are even in a better position to pay. That's my personal opinion.
And that's what the data is also. And you're speaking from a data point of view, from what you have seen.
What I've seen. Men, good. I'm not saying, because at the end of the day, they probably are the one providing for the woman. But again, these are some of the things we're seeing. So what I'm actually saying I'm also an advocate.
Yeah.
What I'm also saying is that, yes, we should do a lot of gender-friendly, product designs, a lot of gender-friendly product advisory, a lot of gender-friendly impact initiatives. At the end of the day, it bridges the gap in the society, because it's the woman that keeps the home. For the fact that they have a caregiving responsibility, they are likely to be more closer to the child, and they are likely to also evolve the child's behavior, pattern the child's behavior, and again, a more balanced society.
I like that closing remark from you have just drawn. The nocturnal nature of the woman, right? And the proximity just means that they are able to influence the child, and their home, and even financial planning and all of that. So I think the topic you just summarized by saying, if you consider the woman and the product is appropriate, you're not just only designing for the woman, you're designing for the children, you're designing for even the children's children, because you will have modeled the child who then grows up, with good financial behavior and is even able to influence, the broader community. So I'll wrap about just to say, and this is my closing remark. You see different associations, different professional bodies. And I know there is a professional body for product designers, and all of that. So in terms of looking at engendering the principles, right, of human-centered design, or these approaches that really drive impact, how do you disseminate? How do you drive? How do you encourage the adoption of this principle? I look around the Nigerian product ecosystem. I don't see any convergence or convening of that nature. It's like everybody is just, on their own, doing their thing and all of that. Is there something that is there? Is there something that, the ecosystem should be thinking about, so that at least, irrespective of where you are, that you are living, that principle that, look, impact is what I am seeing when I'm designing, whether it's a woman, whether it's a child, whether it's an educational program, but its impact is in front of you, right? So is there a kind of approach or something, mechanism on ground, to bring product designers, developers together? Not developer now, product designers now. We're designing for women. If I say developer now, I start thinking about coding and all of those ones. Yeah, what would be your response to that?
I think it's a matter of time.
Okay.
Right? We are not yet there. I'll always tell you that we are not yet there. And I think that we need to build that consciousness, immediately. It's a matter of urgency in my perspective. Yes, you're right. There are quite a number of organizations, professional bodies or professional organizations, conferences upon conferences and everything. What I'm beginning to see in the recent conferences that I see now that when you have all women panel, and again, they discuss women issues or impacts things that are impacting women, especially from an entrepreneurship, from a product kind of, the kind of product, that they consume. I think it's a matter of time. We just need to build that consciousness
and the moment,
and a lot more work needs to be done, especially in this outside of the world, where anytime we sit, we need to advocate for at any forum we sit to say, look, a woman or as a human, there are specific needs for every gender, and we need to design products that are equally fitting for everyone, so that is inclusivity, is across. That can avoid us excluding certain type of people. And that takes me to AI conversation. When we talk about use of AI today, right? We also need to ensure that we are not bringing in initiatives that is further excluding,
exclusionary.
That's also a conversation that we must ensure that we empower, even from the schools. You get it? That advocacy must start from the very early days of school, on how people, how children, ensure that, whatever they think or whatever they do, consume in terms of AI or technology, the nuances of, gender or equality, is that place. For me, I think it's a place of, okay, we need to continue to do that advocacy at every level and at every fora that we all find ourselves. Building that consciousness among people is a critical. I know, there might be pushback early, but again, whenever you do it and, people see it, be sure that professionals are always keen, especially if they can see the impact. I think what we just need to keep doing is to put it on the table and keep advocating, especially for those of us that are already conscious of some of these things. People that are not conscious about it before, just make them see, what needs to be done. It's a matter of time.
Thank you so much, Mustapha, for coming. In summary, I think I've learned a lot of things from this. I never knew that some of these things existed, and I particularly like the fact that there is a product that even infuses advisory, specific to your business requirement, and it's not just at individual level. So there's a product for women businesses, there's a product for women as individuals and all of that.
And we have a team of women.
A dedicated team, for this. And I think this is really what the approach to gender responsive design, should really be looking at. Thank you so much for coming. Dear listeners, thank you so much for staying with us. It's been my pleasure hosting Mustapha Otaru, the Chief Product Officer, Sterling Bank, who has been gracious in exposing to us some of the salient things around gender responsive designs, designing for women, empowering households and community. I remain Emmanuel Lumukoro, EFINA's Policy and DFS Advocacy Manager. Look out for the next episode, and we will be coming back to you with more interesting conversation. For now, it's bye from all of us at the studio.
To learn more about EFINA, a financial sector deepening organization seeking to facilitate an inclusive market that works for all Nigerians, please visit www.efina.org.ng.